Hi, friends. This is Sarah Dunn with sarahdoesseo.com. And it looks like we are live right on time at 1 o'clock for our January SEO Lunch and Learn. Thank you so much for joining me here on YouTube Live. I did a few of these last year and haven't done one in a couple months. So I'm really excited to dive back in. And this was actually an audience request topic. So thank you so much to my friend Allie for specifically requesting we start January with Google Analytics. So before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about the YouTube Live format because it's a little bit different. You'll see on your screen there is a chat. I will keep an eye on the chat. Please feel free to use it. But I know it's weird. You have to have a YouTube channel set up in order to send a message to that chat. So if you don't have a YouTube channel set up, it's going to tell you you're not able to do it. So that is a bummer. I still want to answer your questions. So what I'm going to do is actually also have my Instagram direct messages up at Sarah Does SEO on Instagram. And if you do want to ask a question and aren't able to use the chat, I will jump into my DMs at the end of this and I will make sure there aren't any further questions there. I'm going to assume most of you are on Instagram. So please feel free to send those messages to Instagram. All right, so today we're going to talk about Google Analytics. And before we get started, I want to get a feel from everyone on this call. I want to know who has Google Analytics set up already. You'll just give me like a hand raise or a yes in the chat if you can use it. I want to know, do you have Google Analytics set up? And have you ever looked at it? So a lot of the clients I work with have analytics, but they're like, I'm not even sure if it's set up right. I never look at my stats. It's so confusing to me. And I totally get that. So I want to know if you have analytics and if you ever get in there. Some have it, some don't use it. It's okay. I totally understand. You are not alone. Good. We've got a few that have it. I know. Yep. We have it, but barely look at it or know how to use it. Well, there is a ton of information available on Google Analytics, and I think that's one of the reasons people actually avoid it. It's too much, and it's a little bit hard to get around. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to really distill this down into a few of my favorite reports, things that I really think specifically wedding businesses should know about and check out on a fairly regular basis, just to see how you're doing. So let's dive in. I'm going to start by sharing my screen and we'll talk through a few things. All right. So we're talking about Google Analytics. This is me. As just a quick overview, I am an SEO consultant for wedding businesses, and I'm talking to you from my office here in snowy Michigan. I have worked in digital marketing for over 6 years and worked with over 100 clients, and that's generally on website design and SEO projects. So I've looked at a fair few websites and have spent a lot of time in Google Analytics. And as a geek, it's one of my favorite things, but I can totally understand if it's not one of yours. I'm not going to talk too much about setup of Google Analytics today. There are a lot of really good help articles, but before we jump in, I do want to just give you an overview of how analytics works and what it's doing. So when you set up analytics, you put a little bit of code on your website. And what that does is it collects data about your website visitors and their interactions on your website. So every time someone loads the page, Google Analytics sends a little bit of information back to analytics about that user every time the page is loaded, and that gets added to your statistics. So this is completely anonymous. It's just a cookie-based, JavaScript-based system. And it's tracking each user interaction on your site and sending that information to your analytics data. So that is how the data is collected. And as far as privacy, it is pretty good. We're not able to look at analytics and say, I know exactly this person did these things on my website, but we can get an overall view of user activity as a whole. So I am going to open up analytics soon, but first I want to get a feel of what website platform you all are using. That might help me to answer any questions you might have about analytics and how it might interact with your site. If you're willing to share with me in the chat what website platform your website is on, I would love to know. I know a couple of you are on Squarespace and a couple on WordPress, so we're good on those. You got anything else? Oh, we've got a Shopify. Janine's on Shopify. All right, good. Well, let's move to analytics itself. And here's a quick overview of what we're going to find out. We're going to find out about the visitors from last month, where your traffic comes from, your most popular pages and posts, and I might even have a bonus report for you to look at. Not to overwhelm you, but it couldn't get left out. So if everyone would like to go into your browser and open up analytics.google.com, we are going to go spend some time in the audience overview report. And I'm going to switch my screen to my live data of Google Analytics with you. Here's what's cool. I'm going to show you my real data from right now, and we're going to look at it together. So the first report I want you to know is the audience overview report. We're going to go on the left side. Here's your dashboard in Google Analytics. This is something that Google has been trying to improve so that you can get a quick look at a lot of your stats. I personally don't know how to read a lot of this one, and I don't find it crazy helpful. This one is a bit overwhelming to me. So let's skip that and go on the left to one of the most simple reports they have. It's under audience and then overview. This guy's going to load up, and it's going to give us some info about how many visitors have come to your website and their basic interactions. So once you're here, I almost always recommend increasing the date range on Google Analytics. It wants to default for the last week, which maybe would be helpful if you have a crazy high traffic site and you want to know how you're doing week by week. But most of my clients want to know more of like in general how things are going, and they have lower traffic sites. So I'm going to actually take this back to a custom date range. I'm going to do a whole month from December 1st to December 31st. And you can see that changed over here. You can also do the last 30 days if you'd rather. I also could have clicked on last month. So go ahead and increase your range so that you get a little bit more data here. And this will help you understand a little bit better what's going on your site. So here we are. Let's talk about users. 793 users on your site. 767 are new. So they've never been to my site before or haven't been in the time frame that the cookie that identifies their computer, it has existed on their machine. So we'd say over 700 people were new to my site in December. Now, they had 1,700 page views. Well, is that good? I don't know. Let's look at pages per session. Pages per session are at 1.7. Maybe that's a little low. That means a lot of the people that came to the site only looked at 1 or 2 pages. I would love for them to look at more. So that's really useful to know. You also get the average session duration. How long did people stick around? We want to get this as high as we can. So this might be something to monitor over time. Can we increase the average session duration so that we are knowing that people are more excited about what's going on the website? So the audience overview report really gives you a good feel for, is your traffic going up or down? And to really get a good idea over the last year or so, you can take the date range out even further. Maybe I want to know the last several months of the year. I can apply it like that. This I find a little confusing. When I go back a lot of dates, I like to change the report at the top to the week or the month view so I can see really how visitors are trending. That's going to help a lot. I think these day reports, especially when they're really consistent trend like mine are, where there's fewer visits on the weekend and more on the weekdays, this can be really confusing. So change it to weeks or months so that you can really see the trend over time. So that is an overview for you of how many visitors came to your website last month. And if there's some big spikes, you can take a little bit of a deeper look into what's going on there. But that is the first report that I really think that you should know about. Let's move on to report number 2. So the second report I want to show is the source medium report. So this is going to be a quick way for you to see where your traffic comes from. So let's do that together. If you've got any questions, feel free to hang on to those and we'll hop back to them, or put them in the chat at any time and I will answer those at the end. But let's head to the source medium report. This is under acquisition, because we're asking, how did we acquire these visitors? Where did they come from? So acquisition, all traffic, source medium. I'm going to change my date range back to the last month. Say I just want to know where are my most recent visitors coming from. I'm going to change that back to the last month, December 1st to December 31st. And you can use this report to weigh the effectiveness of your other marketing. So say you're putting a lot of time and effort into Instagram. Well, how many directly attributable visitors are there coming from Instagram? You should probably see this column the way I do on my report. So we've got 23 visitors last month came straight from Instagram. There's actually a lot more data here. I don't want you to miss it. Make sure you go down under the table and you can change the number of rows that are being shown. Looks like I've got 29, so I'm going to increase it to 50, and that should show me everything. And you're going to see a lot of different things here. Here's my real data. This is going to show you referrals. So my website was actually linked on a HubSpot blog post. So I'm seeing a lot of referral traffic from HubSpot. Of course, Google is my biggest referrer with 423 of my visitors last month. Also keep in mind though, you're probably going to see some weird stuff in here and you're not quite sure what some of these websites are. If they look really strange like this one, this is probably referral spam. So it's just someone who is hitting analytics trying to get us to click on their website through the reports. So if you haven't filtered out some of these spam traffic, and it's really hard to do, you will see some strange things. I would just ignore those. So I've got that one, and I saw DuckDuckGo, which is another one that's pretty common spam. But look for things that you are actually involved with and see how effective those were for you. This can also be a really good place to increase the date range if you want and get an even longer range look at where your traffic is coming from. Lots of Google traffic for me, but there used to be this really big referral source that may have dropped off a little bit most recently. And I can see that Instagram is sending more visits to my website than Facebook is, probably because I spend more time there and have more actively tried to build community. So that makes a lot of sense to me. But this might be some really interesting data. Oh, and I also might have misspoken. So Facebook's actually broken down into 2 separate columns or 2 separate rows. m.facebook.com is mobile and facebook.com is desktop. So together they're sending some decent traffic to my website. So this is a really good way for you to check out some of the ways you've been marketing and see if those are paying off for you and see where your traffic is coming from. Another thing to look at here is if you have a day where there's really significant spike I'm not seeing this. I do have some higher days than others, but sometimes in clients' reports, I see like, moderate traffic and then like this huge bump for a day or two. That might be something where you really narrowly take in the date range. Say I want to isolate October 10th and figure out what was going on then. You can change the date range to just October 10th and see where that traffic came from. And that can help you understand what seems to be working well. That day might have been a spike due completely to spam. I don't know what torotube.com is. So I don't think that's necessarily a legitimate spike. But if you do have a spike, I see a lot of my clients when they post a new wedding on Facebook, we'll see a really significant spike in traffic. And they would be able to really closely monitor that by taking the date down to just the date that that spike happened. So that can be a really good way to go. Oh, Lindsay has a good question about direct traffic. That's this right here. Direct traffic is the hardest to track because for whatever reason, Google was not able to attribute a source to that. A lot of that can happen if someone clicks a link in an email because it's hard for Google to track links from email. This can also happen if you have an unsecured site and you're getting clicks from secured sites. Sometimes that traffic does not transfer over in Google Analytics because of the security. So that's just one of the reasons I recommend putting your site under HTTPS, because you get a little bit better analytics data. Oh, yes, and Ann at Green Gardens points out direct traffic can also just mean that someone typed in your URL directly into the browser. So I had a client once that would really actively advertise their website URL on print materials. So people would often just straight type in the website URL into the browser, and then they come directly to the site. The last thing I want to point out for direct is it can also be returning visitors. So if you've ever gone to a website and then gone back to your browser and started typing in that website URL and it auto-fills the URL and you just go straight there, that's likely going to be counted as a direct. So a lot of times repeat traffic goes to the direct row there. So Lindsay, I hope that helps. All right. Let's move on to our third report. And as I mentioned, I do have 4 I want to show you. So just 2 left. I couldn't help myself. But this is the one I've been teasing the most, the all pages report, where we're going to find out your most popular pages and posts. So here's how we get there. We're going to go to behavior on the left, because now we're moving from acquisition, which means like, where did my users come from, to behavior. What did they do on my website? So we're going to click behavior, site content, and all pages. And I'm going to change my date range back out because I want to know more than just one day. I'll go to the last 30 days on this one. All right. And here we can see my most popular pages. You hear a lot of people say your about page is the second most popular page on your website after the home page. I would like to say that the data does not support that in most cases. A lot of websites look like mine, where there's the home page. Yes, it does get the most traffic, but then there are also some popular blog posts. These are blog posts that get found a lot on Google. And so often these are some of the most popular pages on websites, the ones that people land directly on. So check this out for you. You might be a little bit surprised. This doesn't indicate necessarily the order that these pages were visited, just the ones that have the most page views. So people may have landed on homepage and then clicked on a blog post, or they may have landed on your site somewhere else because they found it in Google, or maybe you posted a link to your most recent blog post on all of your social media. A lot of times when I go in here for a wedding client, one of their most popular pages will be one of their most recent posts because they've been really actively promoting that to their audience. So this is where you can really get a feel for what's working well on your site and where people are spending their time. And if any of this information does surprise you, it might be time to take a look at that page or post and make sure it looks good. Maybe something really, really old is showing up in this list for you, and it might be time for you to go back and take another look at it. Make sure that the images on that old post or page aren't broken. Make sure everything looks really good, because it might be getting more traffic than you think. So it's really important to take a look at this all pages report and get a feel for what's going on. Now, when you're here, page views aren't the only important metric to take a look at. You might also take a look at the average time on page. This might indicate to you how interesting that page is. And you'll see I'm really happy with these numbers and how long people are spending on my blog posts that seem to be popular on the website, sometimes up to 5 minutes. I noticed that 50 seconds on average are spent on the blog page. That's probably okay, because people are finding a blog post that they're interested in and they're clicking away from that page pretty quickly. But this is a great place to look and see if you see any problems. Things that, maybe people are interacting, spending less time on a page or a post than you think they should. So take a look at that and see if anything seems really off base. And maybe that page needs some fixing. So I really like average time on page. All right. Lindsay asks, our third most popular page is just a /. That means your home page. So that's the home page of your site. So when it's just the URL of your site, analytics just notes that with the /. So for me, this is sarahdoesseo.com and just the home page there. Also, Lindsay says, we have a ton of old blog posts from way before my time with the company. So yeah, that might be a good thing to go check out and make sure all of those look good, because people are finding them and looking at them. And I see a lot of old blog posts, especially if you've transitioned your website once or twice. A lot of times old blog posts don't look good anymore, might be missing some links and some images. So give them some love. Okay, that is a quick overview. There's a lot more we can do here, but I don't want to overwhelm you. I just want you to take a look at some of these and see what information you can glean from it. All right, it is time for our last and final report, which is good because we're bumping up against 1:30, and I promised you 30 minutes of content. So let's go to our bonus, my extra credit. It's called exit pages. And this is one that gets a little bit beyond our basics, but is one of the most important things for you to monitor about your own site. And you're going to see this in behavior, site content, and then exit pages. So it's 3 down from where we are right now. I'm going to click exit pages. And I still think the last 30 days is a good date range for this. This is going to tell us the last page a user visits before they leave the website. So this is super important because this can tell you what is driving people away. And when you see things like maybe the contact page or something like that, that's a decent exit page because it means they might have contacted you and actually finished their session. But you might be a little bit surprised by some of the things you see as popular exit pages on your site. So for me, the top exit page on my site is also my most popular blog post. And I think that a lot of that happens because people land on the site looking for image naming advice for SEO, and they might not be wedding professionals. So I think they pretty quickly realize if the advice is for them or if it isn't. And if they aren't wedding professionals, they do tend to leave after that blog post. I did, when I first noticed that this post was very popular on Google, I did take a look at this and see what I could do. I said, how do I keep people on this page longer? And I put a link to a similar article at the bottom. So that's this image alt text article. And that has reduced some of the exits and some of the bounces. So that's one thing you can do. If you see a blog post, it has a pretty high exit page percentage, You can try to put a link at the end of it or somewhere in it that would encourage someone to spend more time on your website. So send them somewhere related so they don't just leave. So take a look at your exit pages, make sure you increase the number of rows so that you can see more of what they are. And you can see the percentage of people who exit after viewing that site or after that page, and see where your highest numbers are. You can even resort this by percentage of exit to see which pages have the biggest problem. And everybody's got some weird URLs. Sometimes that Facebook puts in some tracking URLs, so that's what those are at the top. But if you sort and then scroll down a little bit, you'll see your highest percentage of exit. And you might want to take a look at that and see if there's something you can do to keep those visitors on longer. So here's my advice for keeping people on your site longer. You might make their next steps more clear. So if it's a blog post, you can link to a similar blog post, or you can suggest they take a look at your services. You might link to related content. So something else that's very similar, if someone's having a problem with image naming, I figure they might be having a problem with image alt text as well. So I link to related content. You can also take a look at your website footer. Do you have helpful links there? You might put a contact page link in your footer so that when someone gets to the end of the page, they have a next step to click on and somewhere else to go. So those things can all help you to reduce your exit percentage and to retain your visitors for more time, which is always good because you want to make sure that they're getting to know you, and the longer they can stay on your site, the more they can know, like, and trust you. Now, keep in mind, your new blog post will often show up here too, because a lot of times if people are clicking on them, they might be your local or your loyal friends and followers already, and they're just going to check out that blog post because it's new and you posted it. So that's not necessarily bad, but still keep in mind how you might encourage them to browse with you for a few more minutes. All right. I don't see any relevant questions to that one. So I am going to keep on moving and bring up a couple closing remarks here. I do have all of this summarized in this presentation here. If anyone would like that, just let me know and I can upload that and put a link in the replay email that I send out. And this would give you more info about where to go to find those reports again. I do want to point out that I do SEO for wedding businesses for a living. So if you are interested in having some help and having someone do some analysis of your site for you and help you find some of those problems, I would love to do that. Please let me know if that's something you're interested in, and we can schedule a consultation to chat. So we do have 2 minutes left, and I'd be happy to stay on longer if more questions are out there. So I am going to start checking out the chat here on YouTube Live. And also, as I mentioned, I will check my Instagram direct messages at Sarah Does SEO. All right, Kayla asks a great question about analytics. How do you make sure analytics isn't tracking your own activity? So that's a great point. You are being tracked. If you haven't done anything about it, your own activity on your website is showing up there. A lot of the time, if you're just working in the admin of your site, that won't show up on these pages. So if you're, for example, in Squarespace, using the Squarespace dashboard to update your website, you won't be tracked there because the URL is actually different. But if you want to make sure that you're fully filtering out any of your results, you'd actually have to filter out your own IP address. So you can create a filter in Google Analytics, and you can find out your IP address and say never track traffic that comes from that IP. And it's a pretty simple step-by-step process. I would probably be better off finding you a nice article and video that walks through that. And I absolutely would be happy to add that to the replay email. So I'll do that for you, Kayla. I'm going to go ahead and scroll up through some of the earlier discussion just so I didn't miss anything. I love hearing that lots of wedding pro sites are seeing spikes on Sundays. Super interesting information that might help you make some choices about whether or not you're posting to social media on Sundays. It looks like people are interested in what you're doing, so maybe you think about doing that. Lindsay has asked earlier, is there a way on analytics to search for a particular post, say on your blog, and see how it's doing? So yes, you can actually go into the all pages report and you can, let me actually show you. Switch my screen. So I'm going to go back to all pages, and there's a filter functionality over on the top right. And if you type in part of your URL and search, you should be able to find that. And then you can get the information about it. So here's a blog post I wrote about categories and tags. I can see over the last 30 days, it's only gotten 23 visitors, but people on average who get there do spend over 4 minutes on the page. So that's how you would look for a specific page on your site and see how it's performing over time. Great. All right, I think that's all the questions in the chat. I'm going to do a quick check of direct messages for you guys. Nothing new there. All right, well, we must be all set. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love doing these SEO lunch and learns, and I'm always looking for advice on what you want to know about, because I love putting together presentations that will help you. So if you do have any thoughts, feel free to let me know, send me an email, or leave it in the chat here if there's something that's been confusing you about SEO or analytics, and we could dive into it on a future lunch and learn. I do have these planned for Wednesdays in February and March as well, so I do have more of these coming, and I'll definitely let you know by email how to get on those. Thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to see you next month, and let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Thanks.